to edit products, we first of all need to change how this edit product screen is loaded, right? Because right now we always load it with the assumption that we're creating a new product. For example, edited product. I initialize this to be an empty product or a product with a couple of empty values here. Now, let's first of all think about how this page should open when we want to edit a product. Well, for that, on the user products screen where we have this edit button, to be precise in the user product item widget there, where we have this edit button, here in onPressed, I of course want to use my navigator and then simply push, not push replace, but push my named route, which of course should be that edit route. So here I can import from the screens folder the edit product screen, and that's what I want to push here. So here I want to push the edit product screen route name. But here I then want to forward an argument as well, because I want to let this screen know about which product I want to edit. So I want to forward the ID of that product. So here in the user product item, I expect to also get that ID. So I'll add this as an argument which I need to receive, which I then store in this property. And then we can forward this ID as an argument so that in the edit product screen, we can load the product or search the product with that ID. For that, we have to go to the user product screen where we use the user product item. And now here we have to pass the ID of the product. But that's not too hard. We can simply access the product we're looking at when we're building this item here, and there we can pass the ID as a value to user product item. So with that, this ID is forwarded as an argument in our routing action here, and therefore we can extract it in the edit product screen. Now a perfect place to extract it would be an init state, but as you learned earlier in this course, modal route of context, which we use to get the settings and then the arguments, doesn't work here in init state. So we can't use it. Other than that, it would be perfect. So if you had the data from some other sort instead from a routing action, you could definitely use init state. But we can simply use did change dependencies, which also runs before build is executed. And I just want to make sure that I don't run this too often, so I'll add a new variable, is init, which initially is true, so that I only run the following logic if isInit is true. And when we ran this for the first time, because did change dependencies will run multiple times, I will simply set isInit to false, so that for future executions of did change dependencies, we don't reinitialize our form. Now with that, we can extract our product ID here from the modal route by using off context there, tapping into the settings and there into the arguments, and we know that this will be a string because the arguments we receive here is only one piece of data, and that of course is the ID we're forwarding here. So that's what we extract here, and with the product ID we can of course use our provided products to find the product there. For that we can use provider of context, and of course, let it know that we are looking for the products class or for the products object. And there we already added a find by ID method earlier in the course. We can use that to get a product with that ID, and of course, make sure you set listen to false here so that we only fetch this one time and we don't set up an ongoing listener. With that here, we get our product that we're looking for, and this is now the product we want to use to initialize the edited product. So I'll set edited product equal to product, or we immediately set edited product equal to what we retrieve here at this point. So with that, we're loading the product we need from our list of products for that given ID, and we initialize the edited product with that data. The missing piece is that we now need to initialize all the form inputs with some default values. So down there in the build method, I want to make sure that this text form field has either an empty default value if we're adding a new product, or the existing title of the product we're editing. Now, an easy way of doing that is to add yet another variable here init values. That could just be a map, but you could also use a new object or a new class which you create for that purpose, where I have a title key with an empty value mapped to it, a description key with an empty value, a price key with an empty string, and that's important, a string, not a number, and also the image URL, which holds an empty string. These are my init values, which are set up for a new product, and I will simply override them here in did change dependencies if we have an edited product, which we clearly have at this point here. So here we can now set the init values equal to a new map where I set the title equal to edited product.title, the description equal to edited product.description, the price equal to edited product.price to string. However, I want to store this as a string and output this as a string in the input, and also the image URL is set to edited product image URL. I use strings only here because the inputs, the text form fields, only work with strings. You also might remember that for the validator, you always get back a string because the text inputs only work with strings. Even if it's a number, you have to do that conversion. And since they receive and work with strings, I convert my number to a string before I pass it into the text form fields. Before we do any passing, there's one important check I should add here though. When we're extracting the product ID, we might not have one, of course. We only will have one if we indeed did load this route with an argument. Did change dependencies will always run when this page is opened though, so also when we add a new product. Now when we add a new product, then we reach that route because on the user products screen, we pressed that plus, this add icon here in our action bar. And here I'm not passing any arguments to the route. So retrieving arguments actually may fail. And therefore on the added product screen, when we retrieve the product here, we absolutely have to check whether we do have a product before we continue. So I'll check if product ID is unequal to null, which means we do have a product ID, and only then I want to grab my edited product and overwrite the init values. Otherwise, I'll not do that. In all circumstances, isInit should be set to false thereafter though. So now with that, we're initializing the values differently if we did find an ID and if we did load a product therefore. And now the init values can be used here in our build method or in our widget tree. On every text form field, you can set an initial value, and that should now be init values, title, and so on for all your text form fields. And this will be stored as an initial value in that, well, field, which you can then build up on. So we do the same here and access the price, and do the same down here to also access the description, and of course do the same down there for the image to access our image URL. And now with that, if we do a full restart here, maybe full refresh I should say, and we go to manage products and I added the red shirt, I get an error. And this error, if we have a look at the error message, stems from the line here where I actually do set an initial value for my image URL. The problem here is that I also use a controller for the image URL. Now you can't use both. If you have a controller, you can't set the initial value. Instead, then you should set the controller to an initial value, and that will be reflected back into the text form field and what you see on the screen automatically. So therefore here, we should go up to the place where we set all the initial values in did change dependencies and not do this for the image URL. Instead, simply set image URL here to an empty string or to null, and rather reach out to the image URL controller and set the text here equal to the edited product image URL. And this is how you should do that. If you do that, then you do a hot refresh here. And we now go to manage products and click edit. Now this works and you see that's all pre-populated. The problem now would be if I hit save, this would be added as another new product. And of course, that's not what I want. I want to edit the existing product instead. To edit the existing product instead of to create a new product, we have, of course, this save for method where we do call add product in the end. And that's the place where we need to step in and do something else. Because there I want to check if edited product has an ID, because that's a good criteria for finding out whether we're editing or not. Edited product ID is only set if we loaded a product because we received an ID as an argument. Because if we receive an ID as an argument, we kick off this whole logic here where we find a product by ID, and that's our edited product then. And this obviously has an ID, we're finding it by ID. Instead, if we're adding a new product, edited product is set equal to a product where we set the ID to null, so where we don't have an ID. And therefore, this is a great check. If we have an ID, so if this is not equal to null, then I know that I'm editing. If we have an ID and it's not equal to null, then this product existed before. Otherwise, we're adding. So in the else case, I want to call add product. In the edit case, I want to update an existing product. And for that, let's go to products and make sure we have a method that allows us to update. So a new method, update product, which certainly will need the ID of the product we want to update, and then also the new product or whatever you want to name it. Now here we can first of all look for that product with that ID in our items. So here in items, we can get the index where a certain condition is met. Again, this takes a function which runs for every item. And I want to check if product ID is equal to the ID I'm getting here. And this will give me the prod index in my list of items. And I'll need that index again to then replace that item at that index with a new product. Because I then want to say items for that prod index I found, there the item which is currently stored at that index should be overwritten by, well, new product here in the end, right? By the product I'm getting. Because this will then be the new product, and therefore this is what I want to store here. And thereafter, of course, call notify listeners. Now we could also add a if check to first of all check if we found a product with that index. So if prod index is greater than 0 or greater equal than 0, it should be. And that avoids that we try to update products which we don't have. Though in this app, we shouldn't be able to get into a position where we try to update a product for which we don't have an ID. So this is a check which currently shouldn't really be required. Now, one important note about setting our product at this index equal to the product we're getting here. Where is this new product coming from? Well, update product is the method which I call from inside edit product. So the idea here is that I have the same logic as down there, where I add a product with provider off, listen to false, but then I call update product here, and I don't just forward the edited product, but of course also the edited product ID as the identifier. Now the problem with the edited product is that I do initialize it here, I retrieve it from my store, so to say, from my container, from my provider. And that, of course, contains the ID, and it also contains my favorite status if the user who's logged in checked this as a favorite or not. Now, one problem we'll have is that I constantly overwrite this edited product in all my on-saved methods with new products, which always set the ID to null and say nothing about the favorite status, which means that we'll use the default favorite status of false to recreate these products. Therefore, my ID gets lost and the previous favorite status gets lost. Solution is to set this equal to edited product.id and also set isFavorite equal to edited product.isFavorite, and do that for all the places where we create a new product. So also down there, and for the description as well, and of course also for the image URL. There at the bottom here, I also want to store the correct data. With that, we make sure that we don't lose the ID and the favorite status, which would be bad. And with all of that, here we should be able to now submit that form and either update an existing product or, well, add a new product. Let's try this, and let's also see if our data is preserved correctly. For that, first of all, I'll favorite the red shirt, then go to Manage Products and click Edit here, and add an exclamation mark and change the price to 39. Hit Save. The exclamation mark is there, and if I go back to my shop now, I have my favorite status still, the exclamation mark is here, and we see the new price in the details page. So that all works, this is updated correctly, and therefore we can now edit this too. If we add a new product, just to confirm that this also still works, this is a test. And I use this good old dummy image which I used before. Then indeed this is added as a new product and no existing product got changed. And of course we see that new product here as well now. And then of course we can also go ahead and edit this new product if we wanted to. So that's all working as it should. With that, let's make sure that we can also delete our products with a click on the trash button here.